Hey guys, I'm Naya and welcome back to the channel. For today's video, I decided we're going to talk about decks that you should be looking out for in 2023. I went over the sets and obviously we know of a couple cards that are going to be coming out, and I figured I would just bring to your attention a couple decks that I feel like are really going to be doing well. Maybe not immediately in 2023, but most definitely post the first ban list we get. So before we get started, I also want to shout out my patrons. I'm very thankful for you guys, and if any of you want to support me over there, you can always check the link in the description below. And with that, we're going to get started with the decks. The first one I wanted to talk about is Kashtira Tearlament. Now this one is fairly obvious. In Photon Hypernova, we're getting the Tearlament's Kashtira card, which essentially binds and just combines the two archetypes together, because both field spells are going to be able to get to the engine. With the Prime Planet Paraisos, you're going to be able to search Kashtira Fenrir, which can not only get itself, but also the Tearlament's Kashtira if you want. And with the Perla Rhino, you're going to be able to get Kashtira Tearlaments like immediately, because both words are in the name of the card, so it's searchable off of both of the field spells. It's tying the engines together. It's also an extender, and it's just a nice card to have in the deck. As we've seen in the OCG, most lists immediately picked up the Kashtira engine and package in the Tearlament deck as well, so that's most definitely a deck to look out for almost immediately when 2023 begins with February with Photon Hypernova. And in the same set, we're also getting a bunch of other Kashtira cards, and that's going to be the next deck we're going to be focusing on. So pure Kashtira, I have mentioned before, I've talked about an introduction to the deck. There's a lot of stuff already on the channel, so if you want to know more about the actual deck, make sure to go check out those videos. But basically this deck, I think, is going to be, maybe it's going to start off as like an anti-meta strategy. It's very stun-like, it's locking your zones, it's able to play D-Shifter and cards like that to basically prevent you from playing and to really counteract the best decks. And yeah, and then maybe it might evolve in a better deck, in even a meta deck, if more people pick it up and there's actually representation of people playing that deck, because I do think it's going to be a threat. Now, we don't know quite yet. As of right now, we only know the combos and we know how it's been doing in the OCG up until the point of the ban list, and it does seem interesting. Their Arise card, like their boss monster sort of, is honestly insane. It's got a busted effect, and pretty much almost every single card that came out in Photon Hypernova is a great addition to the deck. So that deck as just a pure one is most definitely something to look out for. As for the next deck, I wanted to talk about Tri-Brigade Sprite. It's almost obvious we're going to mention it at some point, because with the OCG ban list that just dropped, we immediately saw that everybody jumped to Tri-Brigade Sprite. Now, something to keep in mind, they have different sprite hits on the OCG ban list than we do over here. So over here, we pretty much only have Ronin Totem banned, so the deck might even be better. And they are playing Pure Sprite in the OCG as well. And Pure Sprite is going to be a deck to look out for in 2023, but that's almost obvious. Like the deck, since it hasn't lost anything and we doubt it's going to get hit, it's naturally going to be a deck that's worth picking up. But specifically, I wanted to mention this version, this combination of Tri-Brigade Sprite, just because of the recent successes in the OCG. So yeah, it's doing well. You know, the synergy is obviously in the level 2s. Now Sprint is able to send Kit and Karas if you want to have additional names in the graveyard to either banish or to revive off of Elf, which again is able to revive level 2 monsters from the Tri-Brigade archetype to then get them onto the field and perform link summons that way. And the thing with Sprite has always been that you are 2-locked, so level rank 2, and it doesn't really matter, because with Tri-Brigade you're just able to put those link 2s on board and stay locked. And if you want to go into something like an Appaloosa, you just make an IP and just wait and do it on the following turn. So pretty much like you're doing right now in Sprite, if you want to go IP into Automax or just have any kind of setup, you're able to set it up and get it ready even if you are 2-locked. So it's not even like, it's not that bad actually. Like you're able to play double Dragon Lords, again the link 2, you're not bothered that you're locked, and it does seem like a very interesting mashup, so most definitely a deck I wanted to bring to your attention. moving forward, I do think Labyrinth might be a deck we should be looking into. Now, again, taking inspiration from the OCG, it has started to gain popularity over there. And why Labyrinth specifically is interesting to me is because it's a trap deck, but it's not based on floodgates. You know, you're talking about a deck that just basically relies on normal trap cards. And we could argue that normal trap cards aren't the greatest in the game. Like, you really need to pilot the deck well and really know when to use your disruptions, because you're not going to be relying on just flipping up a floodgate and just sitting and essentially like hiding behind the floodgate. You actually need to like proactively use your trap cards to you know, disrupt the opponent, to give yourself some kind of advantage. And Labyrinth really does feel like a deck that's managing to incorporate trap cards to the point where it does seem like a viable strategy, because overall we did really see the decline of just control decks when it comes to specifically decks that run, you know, trap cards, or even stun decks, I should say, decks like that, you know. So maybe with the Labyrinth support in Photon Hypernova, we can see the resurgence of decks like these, because as much as some of these decks might be a bit hated and it's annoying to play against trap cards, like, it's still interesting to see a diverse format, and a format where a bunch of different decks can thrive, which right now is not really the case. And this argument could go for Sprite, Tri-Brigade, Pure Sprite, you know, Labyrinth, pretty much almost every single deck on this list I have over here. Like, basically it's just a deck that's getting suppressed by Tearlament. And as soon as the ban list comes, I do think we're going to see a lot of changes in the format, because some decks, like even Labyrinth, could be a good example of that. It doesn't seem like a bad deck. It just seems like a deck that, number one, is receiving support, so it's missing support right now, which is fairly obvious, and the trap card is really, really nice as a form of support. And number two, it's just way too oppressed and overwhelmed by the best deck of the format. So once the ban list drops, then I think it's going to be a semi-impactful one when it comes to tier limits in particular. I do think when like the dust settles and everything is like sort of back to normal post the tier 0 format, I think a lot of decks are going to get even better. And yeah, with that, I also wanted to really quickly go over Jaeka Slayer. I mentioned them a lot. At this point, you probably know why I'm still mentioning them. Jaeka Slayer is really interesting because it seems like a deck with so much potential, but sometimes it seems a bit too reliant on your combos to most definitely go through. Like, you have 2-card combos with the discard, which is insane. You're able to run non-engine in the deck as well, which is almost unheard of when it comes to Pendulum, because you really need to run like just all engine, all gas in Pendulum decks. But right now you are able to include cards like Kashtira, the Fenrir, of course, like Bestios. So with that, you're taking away from your engine, and sometimes if your hand is not really, really perfect, you can just lose to a single hand trap, which doesn't feel good. But other than that, you know, I think Jaeka Slayer is most definitely a deck that's going to just it's going to be really nice. I do think it's going to be really nice and a very, very formidable combo deck to go up against, especially if the elements really gets hit, because there's not a lot of other combo decks right now. And I think Jaeka Slayer, like, I think it's gonna be great. I genuinely believe that. And it's also so cool to see how it's able to adapt the end boards to pretty much anything you're going up against. Like, you literally have boards that you're going to be building against Flunder, like making a seal or something, you know, and then there's just a way different board if you're going up against Tearlament. You're able to utilize the rank 4 Xyz monsters, which are like amongst some like the best ones, with Dweller, Baguska, again for specific matchups, with the field spells that you can utilize again for different matchups with Necro Valley, Zombie World. Like, it's just so matchup dependent, you know, which board you're building, and the combos are like 2.5 card combos anyway, so it gives you space to run on engine, like I said, and the deck just seems all around a really, really, really nice contender even right now. So I can't even imagine, like, post a ban list, what could happen to the deck, honestly. So we only have 2 more decks to cover. For the next one, I wanted to talk about Plunder Patrol. Now, we have seen it win the Madison Regional, getting first place, like with Plunder Patrol. That's actually insane. Like, Plunder Patrol has always been, at least to me, a very decent rogue contender that can struggle with a couple things. Like, number one, the pilot really needs to be great with the deck, I think. You can't really afford to make mistakes in a deck that's inherently less powerful than some of the other ones. That's the first thing. The second thing is sometimes in specific matchups it can struggle because the attributes aren't really useful to you, because the deck is so reliant on your opponent basically to making plays that, you know, without them or without going up against decks that really have archetypes that benefit you with their attributes, you're going to struggle a bit. And it makes going first a bit weirder, because you would sometimes rather go second in a deck like this, again, relying on your opponent. But going second may be quite hard in certain formats, or again, against a deck that's not going to benefit you in some kind of way, it's a struggle as well. So thinking about all of that, the deck still seems like it has potential. It's constantly getting support, you know, new attributes of the ships. And right now it is getting support in Photon Hypernova. So specifically, I wanted to mention it because of that as well. Like the ship, what it's doing is it's giving your turn one plays, how to put this, like more power. It's giving you attributes on your first turn, which before that, like that wasn't a thing. And you being able to produce a token that literally like benefits you with the attribute that you choose for your plays, it means a lot, I think. And I do think it's going to be like top of rogue contender, or even better if people really like just grind it and test it, and if a pilot is really, really good with it, like I said. And you're also able to run the adventure engine in the deck if you want. Some people run it, some people don't really prefer it, but I think adventure engine, especially post the ban list, is going to be really nice again. Like, it just sort of fell off a bit, but it's still a very, very nice engine that's semi-generic. Like, you can include it in a lot of different decks, and it's just providing you the negate to protect your plays. It's providing you bodies with the level 7 if that's something that's useful for your strategy. So yeah, you know, some people run the adventure engine, and I think it does seem nice in this deck. And I definitely wanted to mention the deck. Like, I think it's one of those decks that really, if you don't know what it's doing, it's just going to catch you off guard, and you're not going to have a good time going up against it. So definitely would be a deck to look out for. And yeah, as for the last thing, I wanted to mention the Gishki archetype, or the Gishki support, probably I should say, coming out in Photon Hypernova, because it's going to provide an additional engine to be played in Sprite if you want. Now, in the OCG, it was seeing some play, but not that much compared to like the pure variants or the Tri Brigade variants, and taking into account the fact that over here we don't even have the same ban list hits when it comes to Sprite, we might not even play the Gishki engine. So that's the first thing I wanted to mention, and that's why it's the last thing on this list, because it's more so just an interesting thing to talk about. So if you're still here, still watching the video, I'm very grateful for you guys, and let's just talk about the Gishki stuff. So essentially it's almost replacing the Beaver engine, because with the spell card being released in Photon Hypernova, you're going to be able to search a Gishki monster, which can then be normal summoned, special summoning one from the deck. You're searching a monster, going into Elf, reviving, searching another monster, because it's not once per turn. So then you're able to perform a ritual summon. And what the ritual monster does is it negates a monster effect and shuffles the monster into the deck. It is on the 5th summon if you're going for that kind of combo, so it is Nibiru proof, you could say. But overall in Sprite, like, you're not that afraid of Nibiru or hand traps, or like, you're able to put up red if you want, you're able to put up carrot if you want, and sometimes you're going to be too locked with starters, so you're not even like ritual summoning on your first turn, which can get awkward as well with you having to keep those cards in hand as follow-ups. So as much as like the engine seems really interesting, and because you have enough bodies on board, you're able to go into a gigantic, summon the Sprite stuff, continue with your Sprite plays immediately if you open just the Gishki spell card, for example. I don't know, like, to me it still seems like the Beaver engine might just be better, and like I said, we do have a much different format than the OCG, but I still think it's very interesting support for the Gishki archetype, and just a nice engine to pick up. So I would probably recommend picking it up, especially if it's cheap coming out of Photon Hypernova. And yeah, like I said, it does seem interesting. So with that, that's going to be it for today's video. I know we're getting amazing defenders as well. There's archetypes in that set, and obviously those are just a couple ideas, a couple decks at the beginning of the year that I genuinely believe are going to have some kind of metagame impact. So that's why I only wanted to include the decks included in today's video. So if you guys did enjoy, if you got any ideas from this deck, or yeah, if you just liked it, you know, like it, and let me know down in the comments. Sub to the channel, of course. Check out all the social media, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.